Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. As the two people I have on the show right now, Jose Vega and Scott Ritter is with me, and I want to just run this story past them. This is from Middle East Eye. Israeli soldiers becoming disillusioned and tired of fighting in Gaza. That's a report. Increasing numbers of Israeli soldiers are becoming disillusioned with fighting in Gaza and other areas of conflict in Lebanon and the West Bank, leading to some to refuse to return to the battlefield. According to a report in Israeli outlet HaMakom, interviews with over 20 parents and fighters in a range of battalions have revealed increasing dissatisfaction amongst the ranks. Among the Nahal Brigade, soldiers spend 5 weeks fighting in Gaza before returning home to rest, something they have done 11 times so far since the beginning of fighting October 2023. However, according to HaMakom, I hope I'm saying that even close, during the 11th deployment, only 6 soldiers of a platoon of 30 showed up, with the others coming up with excuses. I call it refusal and rebellion, said Inbal, mother of one of the soldiers in the platoon. They keep going back to the same buildings they've already cleared, only to find them booby-trapped again. In the Zaytun neighborhood alone in Gaza City, they've been there 3 times. They understand that it is futile and it's pointless. All the interviewees in the report spoke anonymously over fears they would face harassment from the military. What kills them is the conditions and the duration of the fighting with no end in sight. You never know when you will get out, and it's been like this for a year, another parent said. The Israeli military has published the names of over 750 troops killed since the war began in October last year, including more than 350 who were killed during ground operations in Gaza. At least 43 Israeli troops have been killed in attacks and ground operations on the northern front of the war, along with the Lebanese border. Another soldier told HaMakom that missions were being done halfway as a result of lack of manpower. The platoons are empty. Those who aren't dead are physically wounded or mentally broken. Very few come back to fight, and even they aren't fully okay. Wow. This is from the New Arab, not The Onion. CNN highlights suffering of Israeli army bulldozer driver who ran over so many people in Gaza, it made him turn vegetarian. That is not from the... So, of course, CNN is sympathetic to the guy who drove the bulldozer. He got out of Gaza, but Gaza did not get out of him. Israeli soldiers returning from war struggle with trauma and suicide. This is from CNN. Guy Zakin provided insight into their experience in Gaza. We saw very, very, very difficult things, he told CNN, things that are difficult to accept. The former soldier has spoken publicly about the psychological trauma endured by Israeli troops in Gaza. Boy, imagine the trauma that Palestinians had to go through. In a testimony to the Knesset, Israeli's parliament in June, Zakin said that on many occasions, soldiers had to run over terrorists, dead and alive, in the hundreds. Everything squirts out, he added. Zakin says he can no longer eat meat, as it reminds him of the gruesome scenes he witnessed from his bulldozer in Gaza, and struggles to sleep at night, the sound of explosions ringing in his head. When you see a lot of meat outside and blood, both ours and theirs, Hamas, then it really affects you when you eat, he told CNN, referring to the bodies as meat. I'm not sure this piece is about the IDF soldiers who had to go vegetarian because of how many people they bulldoze is really achieving the goal CNN had for the article. Yeah, I don't think so. I think CNN wanted it to make people sympathetic towards the IDF soldiers. Why? By the way, just to let you know, why is Ukraine's army facing desertion crisis? I've got 3 guesses for you. So let me bring in Scott Ritter and Jose. Scott, could you have predicted this?
Well, you can. I did predict it. I called out the Israeli army from the very beginning as being an army that is not professional in the sense that the American military is professional. I'm not defending any war crimes carried out by American soldiers. I know that we have misbehaved abroad as well. I'm talking about training and preparation for war. I can say that the United States Marine Corps, when we train a Marine, that Marine is ready to close with and destroy the enemy through firepower maneuver 24/7. He lives, eats, breathes war. He prays for war. He wants war. And once war starts, he wants to stay in war until he's either killed or broken. Marines do break. But the point is, we know what we're getting into when we sign up. The Israelis, they're a conscript military. It's obligatory service. And the Israelis have made war easy because they don't really fight hardened enemies anymore. They bomb children, they bomb women, they go in with technological supremacy, they fight short wars. They're not used to taking casualties. They're not emotionally prepared for the reality of war. And I said they're going to go into Gaza, and that's one of the first articles I wrote. They're going to turn Gaza into the equivalent of Stalingrad above the ground and Iwo Jima below the ground, meaning the Japanese tunnels. And they're not prepared for either. And as a result, they're going to get worn down. They're going to get worn out. And eventually they will lose because of a death by 1,000 cuts and exhaustion. That's what we're seeing right now. The Israeli military is not organized or indoctrinated for this kind of long war. An Israeli general himself said if this war continues on to the summer, the Israeli army will cease to exist because people will just stop fighting because they don't believe in this. I mean, the genocide that they're doing will break. Could you imagine somebody coming back at the end of World War II, a German, and he said, I was in the Einsatzgruppen, and I had to shoot Jews. I had to shoot a lot of Jews. It got really ugly there. They were lined up in the ditch, and I had to shoot them, and the blood came out, and the brains came out. Sometimes the children ran away, and I had to bayonet them, and I can't sleep at night because of this. Would you have any sympathy for this murderous dog? No, of course not. There should be no sympathy for the Israelis. The Israelis are committing a war of aggression against the sovereign people, the Palestinians, whom they've denied any opportunity to have a homeland. Israel has no right of self-defense, and the Israeli army has no justification in carrying out the crimes that they're doing. And the same can be said of the Ukrainian military. They're losing confidence in why they're fighting. They're now waking up to the reality that this war could have stopped back in April of 2022. And had it stopped in April 2022, they'd have Kherson, Zaporizhia. They'd have 700,000 men alive. They've had an economy that's intact. Instead, they're recognizing the fact that the West has goaded them into this conflict where their only future is death and destruction. That's it. They're not going to beat the Russians. The Russians are going to continue to kill them. And many of the Ukrainian soldiers are recognizing this and making the determination to run as opposed to stay, fight, and die.
Do you think that is happening in Ukraine? I mean, I guess you just said so. So you think that? I can't believe that it's taken this long. I can't believe they couldn't realize this immediately. And I mean, if I can realize it here, I'm sure they could. Anyway, but there
is something to be said about fighting. Look, I understand the Russian position, and I'm actually somewhat sympathetic to the Russian position. But I recognize that the territory that they're fighting on is Ukrainian territory. Even the territory that Russia has taken, and Russia says is ours, Ukrainians are saying, but it was ours first. It was ours before you intervened militarily. So I can understand Ukrainians saying, I'm willing to fight and die for my homeland. I'm willing to fight and die for this territory. But at some point in time, when you realize that this is futile, that you're not going to be able to recapture this territory, that all that's going to happen. There was a brigade commander in the Ukrainian military, very well-regarded brigade commander. His brigade was a tough brigade. It fought very well. And he said, they keep telling us that we have to restore the 1991 borders, meaning drive the Russians back out. He said, but the fact is, we're going to restore the 1991 borders, but not the ones that they're thinking of, meaning that the Russians are going to drive them all the way to Ukraine, absorbing all of Ukraine. That's the reality the Ukrainians are coming up with, that if they continue this futile exercise, many of them are going to die, and those that don't die are going to lose their country.
Jose,
can I add something?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, uh, you know, you guys know Rafat Al-Arir. He was the one who was killed by a Israeli drone strike. I believe this was earlier in 2024 or so. And Max Blumenthal in the book Goliath, I think, or it's in 51 Days War, describes this very thing about, well, who would have sympathy for the Israeli army? You know, as Scott said, it's a conscript army. So you have kids who are born in Israel who are brainwashed pretty much from the day they're born that they are supposed to be the superior chosen people. And then they go into the military when they're 18 years old, and then they're shown all kinds of advanced brainwashing techniques to make them kill. But Rafat Al-Arir, when he was teaching at the Islamic University of Gaza, had his Palestinian students, and this was a university that was funded by Hamas, by the way, in 2007, I believe. He had his students write essays from the perspective of Israeli soldiers who would shoot up kindergartens and mass slaughter children. And he would force his students to say, now, I want you to write about that Israeli soldier when he has to go home and talk to his family. And I want you to imagine what kind of nightmares and PTSD he must be suffering. That was Rafat doing that with the kids his students that he was teaching poetry to. But not only that, he was teaching them Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. And this Palestinian poet, was doing his best to say the Israelis have no humanity for us, therefore we have to have humanity for them. This was even after their university was destroyed and bombed, and a lot of original Palestinian poetry was burned up in that university. He still asked his students to try and have some humanity. I think what we are seeing here is a classic case of old men have strife and conflict and jealousy and feuds that go back generations, and young men die because of it. The point is that this is all stupid. It is all absurd. And that's my take on this. I think that it should all end. I don't think a 16, 17, 18-year-old should be sent off to war for something that happened generations ago, to go and mass slaughter people that he will never understand. So that's my take on it.
I'm reminded of the quote of when I don't know who said it. It was Nietzsche or Jung. Someone said, "When fighting monsters, be careful not to become a monster yourself."
Yep.
And so, I think it's if you can hold on to your humanity and see the humanity in others. And Carl Jung talks about your shadow projection. That's what war is. War is when you have the worst parts of yourself projected onto your enemy, and if you can make that part of yourself conscious, you can then not condemn your enemy, but you could see them as yourself, which is what Jesus's message was. So it's definitely different points of view, but war is horrible. And if we could stop the war, Jose and Diane Sarah are going to do it this Saturday in New York, October 26th, 2 p.m. I'll be there. Tell everybody else who's going to be there, Jose.
Yeah. So it's going to be myself and Scott. So, you're welcome to come, and maybe we'll elaborate on this further. I don't know. I think these things should be fought out. They should be discussed on a stage in a public forum, because that's exactly what kind of discussions we need to be having. And that's exactly what you'll find at this thing on Saturday. Why is it that we have to resort to platforms like yours, Jimmy, where we can have these kind of really, stark discussions? And I think so. Anyway, it'll be myself, Diane Sarah, yourself, Jimmy, Scott Ritter, Colonel Larry Wilkerson, Dennis Fritz, Ray McGovern joining virtually. It'll be our friends from Due Dissidents, Keaton Weiss, Russell Dabular. I'm sure there's somebody I'm forgetting or people I'm forgetting, but I think that's a lot of the people there. Tickets are at vegasarahpeacefund.org. And again, I just want to reemphasize, this is being a part of the resistance. That's how movements are started, by exercising our right to assembly and our right to free speech. Because if we can't get together anymore and decide this is the point where we decide we're going to be sick of all of it and we're going to move and organize together, then we have nothing. So we have to meet this Saturday. You have to come if you want to be a part of a movement that's not just a protest movement, but one that intends to win. So that's my take. That's why you should come.
And the tickets it's a donation. it's not. It's actually not a ticket sale. It's a donation.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's right. Yes, because we are campaigns and these are campaign events, you are technically making a donation to both my campaign and Diane's campaign. It'll be split evenly unless otherwise indicated, and that's how you get admittance. There's a number there. If you have questions and need something answered, you can call that number, and we'll help you out.
So, and then the next day on Sunday, Scott's hosting a series of panels at the Tudor City Steakhouse. I'll be on that. Judge Napolitano will be there. Randy Credico will be there in case you need a Coke hookup. Russell Dobular, Dennis Fritz, Danny Haifong, Garland Nixon, Jeff Norman, Diane Sayre, Jose Vega, and Larry Wilkerson. That's quite the lineup. So everybody go to scottritter.com for the Sunday event. That's a brunch from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And go to VegasAirPeaceFund.org for tickets to the Saturday event. Anything you'd like to say, Scott, before we say goodbye?
Look, again, I just want to point out that what Jose and you have said is morally correct. And it's what we need to be striving for. But I just want to point out the reality of war. He who hesitates in combat dies. And we can speak very well of the people that we bury, saying he was a good soul, he was a kind man. He thought about extending the humane arm at the wrong moment because the enemy who wasn't extending the humane arm killed him. It's essential that we understand that we have men and women in the military who are trained to kill. It's also essential that we, the people of the United States of America, never give them the opportunity to kill. That we insist that our elected officials exhaust every possibility short of war before ordering these brave men and women off to war. The ideal military career would be somebody spending 20 years training for war and never getting the opportunity to do it because we had wise leadership. And that's what these panels are about, how to empower the American people to elect people who make the right decisions. So we don't have to have this discussion about sending Scott Ritters out to fight and die for our country and asking them to do horrible things and come home and pay horrible prices. That we actually have people that believe in peace, believe in humanity, believe in the rule of law, and implement policies that lead to peaceful coexistence and not the violence that we seem to be incurring and encouraging today by our government. So I know I came off as a little hot-headed and red-blooded, but that's my background. But I just want to make sure people understand that I'm not the animal that I sometimes appear to be.
It's scary to contradict you sometimes, eh?
Okay, Jose and Scott, I really appreciate you making time. Thanks for your commentary. Thanks for your peace activism and your work in ending the wars. And I'll see you both this weekend.
Looking forward to it. Hey,
come see us on tour. We're going to be in Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.